Hi, Robert. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for seeing me.
Did you have any questions about the paperwork that you filled out with Julie?
No, not really.
I want to let you know that whatever we discuss here is completely confidential.
Okay.
But if you are in danger to yourself or someone else, I would have to record that.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Yeah, thanks for letting me know.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. What brings you in today?
So I really came in because I've got a lot of stress and anxiety, and it's really taking a toll on my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like about May or June, my wife found out that she was pregnant, and so over the summer we moved into a house, our first house together. This is our first kid, and then about a month ago, I got laid off from my job, and like just the stress of worrying about financials and paying for the house and worrying about insurance for my wife and like trying to get a job and all this stress and anxiety is really taking a toll on my life.
Mm-hmm. So, in what ways is it taking a toll on you?
I mean, the first way is like the stress and anxiety of getting laid off, and then like worrying about all this stuff is it's like literally keeping me from applying for jobs. Like I'll read these job um, postings and I'll figure out which ones I'm perfectly suited for, and I'll write up a resume and a cover letter, and I'll answer all the questions, and then like right when I'm about to click the apply button,
Mm-hmm.
like my heart starts beating, my hands start shaking and sweating, and like I'm so anxious about like, is this the right choice? Is this the right job? Like, am I gonna get this job? I can't
Mm-hmm.
even click apply. Like I have
So,
to save it. Like I can't do it.
So you're worried about getting rejected, and that worry is stopping you from applying for a new job?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And then the other way is that you know my wife's like 5 or 6 months pregnant at this point,
Mm-hmm.
and like this is supposed to be the fun part. Like the second trimester, there's less worries. There's no motion of like morning sickness. Like this is when all the fun baby stuff starts happening. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're going to like a class together. People are throwing like baby showers. We're trying to like put together the baby's room, and I'm so stressed and worried about like our future and like the house and like her health and like the insurance that like I can't even enjoy these things with her. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I'm in the moment. And I think that like I'm gonna look back and I'm really gonna regret that I wasn't there with her and I wasn't like emotionally like enjoying and like there with her in these moments.
Mm-hmm. And how does that make you feel to know that you're not in the moment?
It just makes me really sad and like regretful. Like this is supposed to be like we have a new house and a new baby, and this is supposed to be like the exciting, like one of the most exciting parts of your marriage. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, how are we going to pay for all this?
Mm. So the worry about finding a job and the financial situation is really stopping you from enjoying your time with your wife.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. What would you say that the main primary problem is in your situation? I know you mentioned that the anxiety of the anxiety really gets to you when it's time to click that button, and how the stress is affecting your relationship with your wife. But what do you think the main problem is?
Um, I mean, I think the main problem is that I have a lot of stress and anxiety about financial problems and like the
Mm-hmm.
insurance situation, but I have so much anxiety I can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know there's services like I've looked at a bunch of jobs, and applying for jobs would help alleviate that stress and help me have a better relationship with my wife. But I'm so anxious, like I can't even bring myself to like submit applications.
Mm-hmm. So, what is the main thing you want to get out of this service?
I mean, I think first of all, you know, getting some coping mechanisms and talking through ways that I can try to conquer the anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually can submit applications and try to find a job. And then second, if you've got coping mechanisms or ways that I can help keep the stress in my life um, from impacting my relationship with my wife and other relationships,
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's like a really big concern too. And then third, I mean, and you already mentioned this, like if you've got services for finding a job, or like, helping with like unemployment insurance or unemployment income. If you could give me information on those services, that'd really help.
Of course, I could give you this information. So tell me a little bit more about your relationship with your wife. I know that you mentioned that you feel withdrawn and you struggle with being in the moment because you're just so worried about your financial stability. Can you give me a little bit more information?
Yeah, like I love my wife and she loves me. We've got a great relationship and she's so kind and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I just don't feel comfortable sharing with her because like the poor woman's like 6 months pregnant. She's working part time, but doesn't get any insurance from it. This is supposed to be like the exciting time
Mm-hmm.
of the pregnancy. The entire time,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my own head because I'm really worried about, man, how are we going to pay for this? How are we going to get insurance for her? And I know she has so much stress
Mm-hmm.
in her life already. I don't feel comfortable sharing with her all the things in my head. And so I think that's just really giving me a sense of separation and distance from her.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really worried that I'm going to look back at this time when it was supposed to be so happy and we're supposed to be doing all these fun, amazing things together. And I'm going to remember that how withdrawn and like uncomfortable I felt talking with her.
Yeah.
And like, I'm going to really regret that.
Yeah, so because you're so stressed out, and she's pregnant, you don't want to burden her
Exactly.
in a way with all your stress because are you afraid that like her stress would affect her health and the baby's health?
Yeah, like this, it'll impact her health and the baby. And it's not fair for me to put more on her. She's got so much on her already.
Yeah. So how do you cope with like these feelings that you have? Do you have an outlet? Do you have any other support groups that you could talk to?
I guess I could talk to my brother.
Mm-hmm.
My brother a couple months ago was unemployed for a couple weeks, so maybe like he can help out. Because I know he's gone through it. He had all that stress of like, how am I going to pay bills? How am I going to pay for, food?
Yeah.
So maybe talking to him would help. Because other than that, I haven't really been talking to anyone. I've just been kind of bottling it up and dealing with it on my own.
That's a lot to take on for one individual.
Yeah.
So I know you said that you've been going through some feelings of guilt, feelings of anxiety, and you've been really stressed out. Have you been feeling sad at all or hopeless or
I mean, like sad probably, but not hopeless.
yeah. How intense do you think your feelings of sadness is?
I mean, a lot of it is just that kind of like laying in bed at night, like saying like, what am I doing? Like, how did I end up here?
Mm-hmm.
But during the day, I wake up, like I'm motivated to get out of bed and get going on stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and until I get to the end of the application and I'm actually thinking about submitting an application, I feel productive and I'm not sad about things.
Mm-hmm. So, do you ever have any suicidal thoughts?
No, not at all.
Not even when you're about to click that submit button, but you just can't get yourself to?
No, because I know it's temporary. Like I know, like I'll get through it, and I've got a lot to live. I got a lot to live for.
Yes, you do. Okay. Well, I want to ask you more about the process of your anxiety when you're looking at that job application and you're about to click that button, but you can't. What is your thought process? What goes on through your head?
Like I think the problem is that like as I go through it, I only apply to a couple jobs. I only like apply to one or two jobs because I really want to make sure I'm the perfect candidate for that job. Like make sure I'm applying for ones where it's a slam dunk, like they 100% should call me. So so I go through that process and I write up the perfect resume, the perfect cover letter. I answer all the questions, and then like at the end, like I start like thinking back at it, and I start like saying, like, am I really the perfect candidate for this? Am I really like? Am I gonna? Are they even gonna call me? Like, am I gonna get the job? Like, once I get the job, am I gonna like be good at the job? And like, am I gonna end up unemployed again?
Yeah.
All that goes through my head in those couple seconds before I click apply, and
So
it's really paralyzing.
a lot of self doubt, and you start questioning your ability and your
Yeah.
competence as an employee.
Yeah.
Where do you think that stems from? Did you ever struggle with your job performance at your past job?
I mean, I worked there for 5 years. I mean, part of it is a lack of experience because, like, I worked there for 5 years. It was my first job out of college, so I've never really like had a professional career search before. I've never like had that experience of like starting a new job and the new job going really well. And then the other thing is like, I worked there for 5 years and I got pretty good performance reviews. Like 3s and 4s out of 5.
Yeah.
And I never heard like negative comments, but then all of a sudden I get laid off. And I'm one of the 2 people that get laid off in my department.
How many people are in your department?
Like 6.
2 out of 6 people got laid off.
Yeah.
So you're good at math. What percentage is 2 out of 6?
I mean, it's like a third of the department. But like the other guy that they laid off was like an idiot. Like he was really bad at his job. And so it's like, well, here's him who gets laid off and here's me who gets laid off. Like, what am I supposed to draw? What conclusion am I supposed to draw from that? Like, obviously, like, people who are good at their jobs don't get laid off.
Obviously, people who are good at their jobs don't get laid off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I don't, like, if I was a boss, I wouldn't lay off someone who's good at their job,
Do you think there's a difference between being laid off and being fired?
I mean, I think you get fired, like, if you're really, like, if you do something crazy, like, you show up to work, like, drunk. But other than that, I think people, like, lay off people who just aren't good at their jobs and they just want to get rid of them.
And the only reason why you've concluded this is because the other person that they fired was, as you say, an idiot.
That was probably me. He just wasn't. He's like a fine guy. He just wasn't good at his job. And like, it's like, okay, here's someone who's not good at his job, and here's me, and we're the 2 that are getting laid off.
And yet, you have never heard from your bosses that you perform poorly. You've had this job for 5 years, and you've never had any negative feedback. But somehow, you assume that you're not competent or good at this job and you're not capable of finding another job.
I mean, I guess when you put it like that, it sounds kind of silly.
No, it's not so. We're not here to judge anything, but I'm just trying to make you understand that maybe it's not what you think. Maybe you shouldn't put yourself down.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, if I had been a bad performer, they would have said something, and maybe like the company wasn't doing very well, so maybe they just had to. They were told like you have to get rid of 2 people, and I was just the unlucky person who was the second person.
Yeah, people get laid off all the time. There's a difference between being fired and being laid off, and you never really know what the company is going through. But based on the facts that you have given me, I feel like you were a competent worker, and there's no reason why you should doubt yourself.
Yeah, no, I guess you're right. I mean, who knows what choices they had to make, and if they thought I was incompetent, they would have fired me or they would have told me sooner. Yeah.
So tell me more about the physical experience that you go through during a job application. I know you mentioned that your hands start sweating and you start having difficulty breathing and you start shaking. Can you give me a little bit more information on that?
I mean, just like you said, like I can't catch my breath, my heart's pounding, my hands are shaking and sweating, and I feel like I don't know. I feel really overwhelmed in that moment, and so I end up like saving it and closing it, and like sitting there for a couple minutes trying to catch my breath.
Mm. So what do you do when you experience that? Is there any coping mechanisms that you go through? Do you do any like practice with breathing or?
I mean, I just sit there and kind of wait till I catch my breath. I don't really do anything specific. Is there like, do you have a recommendation for something I could do?
Well, I think it would be really helpful when you're starting to like get anxious and physically you're starting to sweat and shake. Maybe it would be helpful to just distance yourself from that situation and just take a deep breath and just think that it's all going to be okay. And once you've calmed down, go back and maybe try to do it again.
Yeah, that's a good idea because I've never tried to do that before. I always kind of close out of it and come back later and don't even look at the old one.
Have you ever tried to meditate?
No, not really.
Well, here they offer meditation classes for
Really?
people who suffer with anxiety. So I think that would be really helpful for you to kind of control the anxiety that you go through.
Yeah, that actually sounds like it'd be really good.
Okay, well, after our session, I'll give you a pamphlet for the classes. So, can you tell me some positive things you could do to help your situation and your anxiety and your relationship with your wife?
Yeah, I think taking advantage of the resources that you said that you could give me information on, like looking into like unemployment insurance, um, doing the meditation clinic to help kind of like release that anxiety and that stress a little bit. I think I'll definitely look into those. And also, just like you said, like really trying to face the anxiety head on and like apply to like 3 jobs before we talk again. And like every time that I get those feelings, like, go outside, take some deep breaths, like physically let myself calm down and then go in and just click the button to just apply. And, if I have those negative thoughts, like try to replace them with positive thoughts. I think all of those are things that I could do.
Well, that's great, Robert. Do you have any other questions?
No, I think you've been really helpful. Thank you so much.
No problem. I'm glad you could come in. The model that was used in the session with Robert was the crisis intervention model. And the crisis intervention model provides immediate short-term psychological care to individuals who have undergone a traumatic experience or a crisis situation. And the main goal of this model is to provide biopsychosocial equilibrium in the individual's functioning and to minimize the long-term traumatic effects on that individual. This model seemed appropriate in Robert's situation because he did undergo severe trauma and a crisis because he suddenly got fired at his job during a really important time in his life where he just bought a house and his wife is pregnant, 5 months pregnant. The model has 6 different steps. 1 is defining the problem. 2 is ensuring the client's safety. 3 is providing support. 4 is examining alternatives. 5 is to make plans. And 6 is to obtain commitment.